Her lineage is from Peru, and she works as an Andean shaman and guides people to clear their ancestral traumas. Did you know that how we show up in the world mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually are a direct correlation to our ancestral traumas and experiences?
Welcome to Awakening Soul Divinity, your sacred space for deep healing and transformation. Listen to inspiring conversations with healing experts, spiritual guides, and teachers as we explore ancient wisdom, modern healing, and powerful stories of change. I'll also share practical insights from my personal journey, from spiritual crisis to inner purpose. Whether you're seeking to overcome anxiety, embrace your true nature, or awaken your higher self, this podcast offers guidance to help you transform your life and elevate collective consciousness.
So, hey, everybody. Today we have Elena Radford with us, and I am so happy that you're here. Welcome, Elena. I'm really excited that you decided to join me on this journey.
Thank you, Caroline. This is a pleasure to be here with you. So thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's so much that I'm excited to share with you because I work on some of the things for myself that Elena does. And I'm really excited for her to share that with you because it's so powerful to experience and to understand and to help with our healing so we can change the world, raise consciousness, do the things that we want to do instead of suffering, that kind of thing. So, Elena, are you ready to get started?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. So, can you briefly share like a catalyst or adversity or some kind of challenging experience that led you to the path you're on today?
Yes. I think it's more, I see life like circular time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the experiences will come when there's something to learn from that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it may not necessarily in the past because there was pain and suffering, but it's also understanding the reality of others, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here I was in one of my training trips to Peru, and because I live here in the United States, I came here when I was 19 years old to go to college. It was a time where things were not very stable in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
So I was accepted to go to this private college, but it was too expensive. And realistically, there was no way how my mother can afford to pay for that school. And so the opportunity for me to come to the United States presented. And I had a dream before I came here. And it was a red old truck by the side of the ocean. And I can feel the waves of the ocean coming. And I can see the man, even though I sense, right? Because experiences have to do with feelings. I sensed that he kept his distance because it was my journey. But me stepping into the back of the trunk of the truck, I knew there was the beginning of something.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was changing. Something was changing. So I think through my life, I have been guided through my experiences and visions I had. And the one that I want to share today to explain myself, the work that I do, is when I was standing in this place in Titicaca Lake, which is the tallest lake, and it's so far away from the ocean, but it's a salty lake, right?
Mm-hmm.
And while I was standing in this open space under the frequency of the mountains, and I was in front of a mountain, and the rocks, there's two types of rocks that we call the female rock, which is the one that has it's kind of like the volcanic rock. It has different rocks put together. And then we have the rocks
You
that
say volcanic? Is that how
okay.
that's how it works? Volcanic rocks have many rocks. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
And that's the female for us. The male rock is the one that is flat, just flat.
Mm-hmm.
So I was standing next to this mountain that had a lot of those rocks that they were combined with each other. It was a volcano rock. And then I sense a presence because we have, just sometimes we consider parallel realities, but what we don't know is that we're tapping into the molecular behavior of the rocks that are carrying some stories of what was created to the time of the process that the rock was connected to in the moment.
Mhm.
And then I saw this man standing next to me, looking at the sky, and I was able to feel what he was feeling. And it was a time where the whole world was a shadow. And people in that area, and in his specific time, the sun will come out only maybe an hour and a half of the whole day because the environment was contaminated. So humans will live underground in caves, which is exactly what I was looking at the time, because for the longest time, I kept questioning to myself, why there's so many underground caves in South America, and they're connected to so many places. Even, and so in the Incas inherit this society, they step into this society that have underground caves. And I sense that it was what was happening at that time. And people were living underground caves and surviving and hoping that something will go away. There was not even hope. It was a full acceptance that things were in that way. And that energy, and that's the way I was trained, having experiences from experiences that happened in the past are the results of the experience with our parents. And some of the experience can be traumatic.
Okay, that makes sense.
And some experience will redefine who we are in the future. So I think when we think about humans, we don't, and we only act in our head, and we do things without thinking what are the consequences of it. It's when we create trauma or become part of the trauma. I don't know if I'm making
No,
sense.
100%, because I can see myself. I've done that. I've done that before. And I feel like because we're so disconnected that we don't know that we're doing that. We do it not thinking that this is programming for us.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I've done it before. I understand what that is. And then sometimes you say something and you're like, no, that's not true. That's the way you see it in your head because of your experiences, my experiences. So is that right? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Is that there are situations that are created that can create trauma or it can create fulfillment, but either way, it's experience.
Right.
What the Incas or my ancestors teach is that we have a power, a choice into how we want to continue with the experience. So do we want to have trauma, or do we want to have a life without the trauma? It comes to your experience, right? So what I see in the world is that people they want you to overcome your traumas from the past. But if they don't have the tools to make it happen because they're carrying their own trauma, it's not going to happen. So the best way to do, I learned from my ancestors to clear the trauma, because the trauma of what happened in those underground caves can be a reflection to them, and they create their world because we're so connected. If you come from the space of self-love and you observe the trauma from the space of self-love, then you can change that reality. So it doesn't matter how many times you go to deal with your experience in the past. If you still carry the pain and the suffering without reflection of self-love, you're not going to break the cycle.
Well, let me ask you a question about that then. If you're already, like, this comes from my own experience. I was already so traumatized that I couldn't even get to the self-love. So how can I be in the self-love to be able to observe the trauma like you're saying? How would that work?
Because you start seeing your self-value first.
You
Am I valuable?
you
And
call
I'm
it self-value. Okay.
self-value. Yeah, so let me get it. So let's say, for instance, when I look at you, and this is what's missing in our society, I look at you for the talents that you have, for what you want to create in this moment of transformation, for wanting to learn the truth of things instead of deceiving yourself. There
Mm-hmm.
is value there. That's why you're valuable. That's one of the reasons why you're valuable. And if you embrace that
Mm.
and that you start accepting that and you start acting from that perspective,
Mm-hmm.
then that is already part of self-love.
So it sounds like a willingness, though, from being at a point where it's like I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired type of thing. It's almost like a willingness by seeing the value or seeing the potential value that you are able to get to the other side of that. Am I on the
Right.
right track?
No, you're doing great. And I'm just going to be direct with it. I have seen some people that they go into their experiences of the past, and then they say to me, I was so exhausted for after that experience for several days. I can see in that moment that a person was not coming from the perspective of self-love.
Mm,
If that person is coming from the perspective of self-love and says, I'm going to observe what happened to me from the perspective that I have value, and because I have value, I want to let that go. It doesn't matter what it is, the trauma, it will invite you to be stuck in the past. And it will not let you see the possibilities that you have in the future.
mm-hmm,
But value and embracing your self-love open up you to co-create with the future in a high frequency. So that's why I say I have seen so many people in so many programs. I say, let's go to the past, let's face this thing. And then they get more confused and more contaminated and more, it's not healthy.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
If you tell yourself, okay, I have done this because I didn't know any better, but if I'm going to see things for what they are in the past and that's depleting me, it's not helping me.
mm-hmm.
So I need to look this from a perspective when I'm looking at things in the past. And these are like soul retrievals. People go to the past, right? I'm just going to stop here and slow down and give you another example. I have clients come to me and say, I saw one of my past lives. And in one of my past lives, I was tortured and it was so hard. And I can see why now I feel powerless. But that's a story already being powerless story. Why
Mm-hmm.
do you want to see past lives if you're going to feel even less powerful? So self-love and self-value, well, it will allow you to go into the past. And if you're a coach that is listening to me, take your clients to the past if you're going to show them that they have value, and the reason why they're showing that them is so they can make a choice to let it go, to empower the fact that regardless what it is, they are here to move forward in the possibility of new creation.
Mm-hmm.
So self-value is the key to embrace the new reality that you want to create.
How did you find your self-value? How did you figure that out? Because I'm sure you went through something that
My self-value, of course, I married somebody who's very insecure, that he has some behaviors of pushing people away by being very judgmental. I get that.
mm-hmm,
But that's his story in the past, because nowadays he has done so much better to improve himself. So yes, I have a mother who used physical abuse to punish me in ways that, most people will it was not acceptable at all. I get that. Another trauma is that my father was alcoholic. My fear by then when I was a teenager is for somebody to find him sleeping on the floor.
mm,
Would be so. And then I have another stories where my grandmother never really liked me, and these were really sad stories. I get that.
mm-hmm,
But if I'm going to transform the world, if I want to move forward in creating new choices, I get to think, what is the benefit of those stories for me
mm.
in 2 years from now? It's my choice. And once I choose that, and I'm seeing that the consequences in the future, I'm already in the energy or the feeling of experience of self-value because I'm choosing something that I don't want to experience anymore.
Yeah. And I usually say it's always about choice. So you have a choice to do this, you have a choice to do that, and you have a choice to not make a choice. So it's
Right.
always, yeah, it's always about choice. Yeah.
So when I have my coaching program for clearing blocks and limiting beliefs and creating a better future, we have 11 hours that we spend together. But the first 2 hours and the first two hour consultations is about clearing the past, opening the space for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Is if I keep them, yeah, I don't feel like we need to spend that much time in the past when there's so much that this new future is offering to us. We're going through a huge transformation. We're in the middle of the storm. It's going to get worse, but you have to have a working plan by the
Mm-hmm.
time that things get better. And if you stay in the past, into there is value in trauma, it's not going to happen. We need to let that story go because there's no value on trauma.
I like that phrase. I'm writing it down. There is no value in trauma other than to give us the roadmap or the doorway to walk through it. Do you agree with that? Maybe.
Uh,
I
to
mean,
do
if it
what?
wasn't for the trauma and if it wasn't for the feelings and all that we experience from the trauma, we wouldn't even know to look at it to work through it. That's kind of how I mean, the way I did it, which doesn't necessarily mean that it was a good way or a right way. It was the way I did it, and this is something different that I did not experience. But I feel like it's kind of like a door. The trauma is a doorway, but it still doesn't have any value in the big picture.
And I think everybody has the right to have their own ideas and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to coach to one of my people that wants to make $3 or $4 million, and they
Right.
have to value themselves to that level, for
Right.
me to come to them and say, it is okay that you experience starvation to value food, it's
Mm. It's not what?
not going to
It
work.
doesn't work that way. Interesting. Okay.
It's going to work in the sense that I'm going to put that person into her mind, back into her mind, and become a victim or survivor, behave as a victim or survivor. So the coaching has to be, you want that, who do you become?
Mm-hmm.
Let the experience go. You want the $3 million. Who do you become to make that happen? What is the experience that you have to go through
Yeah.
it to happen? It's like, I was just working with somebody this morning that we have the healers or the people that work in the energy space. They're willing to experience the positive things of it to be able to teach that. But
Mm-hmm.
then we have another people that are choosing not to really experience anything, but just teach from a space where they don't have to experience. So one of them is going to be successful, but the other one's not. But these are again, because I usually teach more into corporate level. I teach more into women that already have hit bottom so hard,
Mm-hmm.
like with alcohol or with different behaviors. They're really ready to move forward in something, which is the future. So it's not a split, but is a conversation of love between the present and the future. And understanding the past is just getting in the way. And I don't know, that's the way I coach. Everybody's different. Yeah.
Right, right. And it's interesting because it's so different from most of what I've heard, which is why this is powerful because we're pulling from another culture. Can you, well, first of all, aren't there other words used for shamans too? Just I want people to understand that there's if they hear it that they can correlate between these words and then maybe
Sure.
explain what an Andean shaman is.
Okay. So Indian shaman is the ones, the most common general, like I say, named, right? Potatoes, let's say. You can just give them name. There's different types of foods. One of them is potato, corn. But inside of that, there is different levels, right?
Mhm.
So to start with, in the big picture of Peru, because we have so many cultures that went there through so many years, we even have, I don't know, I think it's over 20 native different languages. and except for such a small country. So there's a diversity of cultures there. So
Right.
the shamans and the jungle will do some of the medicine plants, but the shamans in the Andean, high in the Peruvian Andes that work with the mountains, they don't use that because
Okay.
like for the lineage that I come, and the coast, the shamans, some of the Mayans migrated there, so it's a different culture, right? So the shamans, the lineage that I come from, we observe the human behavior. And so for me, if I were to use a medicine plant, it's not going to help me to understand because it's a stimulator. For me to understand the human behavior, I have to work really hard into understanding feelings, how we feel about situations, what is the outcome of the feelings, how can that show if it's really working, it's not working. So it's mainly genetics. So in that culture, under the lineage of the ancient lineage that focus in the movement of the heart and frequencies, and we have to learn how to master feelings. There are three different levels. The ones that work with the people that specialize, especially women, and also some men, they look into the behavior of the plants, like these plants can be good, let's say for cancer, this plant can be good for stomach ache, for ulcers. They specialize in the language of the different plants and that they can serve to the different, the immune system of the body,
So
right?
I understand that piece of it because I almost went to Iquitos, which is in the jungle in northern Peru, to do ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And they also have the I forget the name of it. It's the tree that there's a glowing tree there. It's almost like that. I still can't remember the name of this movie that they had it in, but it glows at night under the moon, and it's also a medicine tree. But they're using
Mhm.
plants to go in to help you go inside and to do the healing work, which is different than what you are.
Totally, totally different. Because when I was in Machu Picchu and I was in training, and there's a mountain behind Machu Picchu that I had to climb to be able to acknowledge and to inherit their knowledge. I had like 3 different crystals with me,
Mhm.
ready with my backpack, ready to climb the mountain. And the mountain talked to me and he said, because they have spirits, right? And then
Right.
he says, you're not going to climb, but we're 2 of us. He made it clear that other person is not welcome to climb because he was not ready. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
And when I was ready to climb, he said to me, you're not taking your rocks. You're not relying anything. All what you're going to be relying is in your heart. And once I start climbing the mountain, it was probably one of the hardest things I did in my life
Yeah.
because he challenged me to bring me into my heart by understanding the intensity that we create in our mind and how that blocks us from our heart.
So let me
So
ask you this question related. So the intensity, is that like similar to the intensity that you experience in climbing the mountain? Is that where you learn that experience or is it something else?
it's the intensity of you facing who you are for what you have created in your heart and what you have created in your mind.
Okay.
So going back to your question, there is under that branch of shamans, we
Mhm.
have the people that does the studies of the plants to see how you can generate for ulcers or losing bones, calcium, they look into learning about volcanoes, how those different minerals can benefit the body. So it's more into that alignment.
Mhm.
They believe that these medicine plants that are created in the Amazons, they are just stimulated to the mind. It's not really helping you to be in the heart, right? So there's 3 levels. The next level is the level of the men, mainly men, that are organizing communities. They're more like community leaders where they're teaching them to see a vision of how they want to create their community space and how they feel the speed of the mountains, the rocks, and like if it's going to be, let's say, a climate adjustment, climate change is going to rain too much hard, they're going to adjust the whole
Mhm.
community, those changes. So
Okay.
They're still channeling, they're really being guided into how to create a community in the farms mainly. Now, the other group, which is, and again, I'm telling you about things that even in Peru, people don't know about it because the Spaniards try to destroy this wisdom, right? Okay, number 3 are the ones who are master the frequency of the genetics of the movement. They are the ones who have to be connected to the source of knowledge of the molecular level through the feelings and build the new societies to come into. They create new realities. That's what it is. They create new realities for the environment and for humanity, and everything comes together. They are the ones who can. They are the lineage. If you go to Peru, to the desert, there's a culture, and even before them, the Mu people, right? The Mu people that want to have the long skull heads, the ones that is called in it, like they are the ones who are connected to them. To me, people say species that disappear from our society. You know, we have so many species that disappear. It's a human species that disappear because the frequency of the planet went too low. So, but these are the ones who can do by just observing, and you can find, it's really rare to find. Basically, they find you when you go to Peru, that they can do the surgery incisions, like, right, you know, when they found this skull, sometimes they see that they had a surgery because there's a mineral attached to it and this adjustment, but they don't know how they did it because they did it through the process of the mind, kind of like a Jedi type of thing, something like that. So they have the ability to dissolve the molecular behavior and create new realities. So they are very advanced. It's really hard to find them. And so, and they're very secretive. This is the culture, and the Andes cultures do not talk about that. So when people comes to me and say, I'm a shaman in Peru, and I start listening to them, and it's just by listening to them, you can see the frequency of really what level shamans they are, or what level they're creating, what level they're not creating, or if they're capable to split in different energies and be in 2 different places, or they have the ability to communicate how the plants communicate, or how the water communicates, what language are they using. So this is a very secretive, and people don't talk about it. But I think the reason why I want to explain this to you is because I think it's time for people to understand that sometimes we take things too lightly, and we give our power away to other people that really don't have the skills to take people through transformation because they're not experiencing themselves self-love, for instance, or self-value, how they can teach somebody if they're not experiencing that. And so that's kind of what it is. You know, it takes years to get experience to be the energy, to be. So I think what is the most beautiful about these beings that inherit the knowledge of these ancient beings, the moons, is that you can become something. You can become the energy of love. You can become the energy of compassion. You can become the energy of abundance. You can become the energy of happiness. You embody that. And that's the transformation that we talk about. That.
And that's your lineage, or that's where you learn? Okay. So how were you able to, with everything that you went through in your life growing up, how were you able to find this lineage to know what to do? Because most people, when we're in this world, we're in this 3D world that's you know, whatever, how do you find that ancient knowledge to get to the point where you
get to
are?
the point, what it is right now, the planet has changed so much that the way how you find it is by allowing yourself to feel. Because through the feelings is a language. And by your feelings of love, that you have value, I can guarantee the universe will give you the solutions to the situations. Because there has been a lot of times when I was overcoming trauma, is that I will go into my head and I will say, please, please, you guys help me. And they'll say, we cannot help you if you're not in your heart. So they will say in a very gentle way, redirect your power into your heart and feel the messages in your heart. Feel love, feel kind. And then I'll reconnect back to them. again. Mm-hmm.
So what you just said really resonates with me because it took me a long time. I mean, everything that I had in my process over the years, I kept saying it keeps coming back to love. It keeps coming back to self-love. It keeps coming back to self-love. Now the self-value piece was not there until you just said that, and something just clicked with me when you said it because they go together. And I understood the piece about the self-love, but it sounds like they all work it sounds like they work together.
Yeah, it's a
The
type,
energy works together.
right.
Yeah.
It's we condition ourselves.
Mm.
If we don't feel, we condition ourselves to be manipulated by the brain, by our mind. When we so it got a part of my training where I was able to repair the pain of the back. I was able to repair when people overdose themselves with marijuana, I was able to, I can repair the brain from that. But I was doing amazing things,
Mhm.
but I couldn't help the people that were close to me. Even if they were to have a virus or
Mhm.
flu, I could not generate energy because I was in the energy of drama. I
Did it have
was
anything to do with the connection with your lineage too, though, because they were close? Or are you talking about friends also?
no friends necessarily, just my close ones, because my drama was that I'm not good enough. What
Right.
am I?
That came from your lineage, though. So would that make it challenging to help them if they're in the same energy?
Okay, let's see if I understand this. It came from the fact that I was empowering my poor me story of the trauma
Yes, which came from your lineage. And
for what it happened on the traumas that happened with them.
yes.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
when you were also wanting to help them, that's where I'm going with it. It's you said something about helping people that were close to you. If you are in that energy of the trauma, you can't help the people close to you in that lineage because it's the same energy. You have to be out of that energy before there's
You're
any.
right.
Okay,
You're
that's
right. You're right. So yes, we're communicating. So I'm getting, thank you for explaining. Let me drink a little water. So
okay.
mm, but I bought into the idea of trauma.
Right, right. We all do,
So
I think.
I bought into the idea that the trauma had more power over me.
Mm,
And that's why I was not able to help them. But once I accepted that the trauma is just the energy that is trying to use me to be alive, it's not even about my mom or my father or their ancestors. It's way before. It's just the energy that was created that is toxic, and in order to survive has to create pain and suffering. And
mhm,
I decided that I'm not going to accept pain and suffering in my life.
mhm.
That is
Yeah.
stimulated my brain. I mean, I can hurt myself. I just injured my arm the other day. So that's a little different, right? But the stimulation that we create because we see a benefit in that, without even knowing that we're seeing benefit. The moment I say I'm not supporting that in any shape, any form, no more pain and suffering. And trust me, it was not easy. I kept telling myself that for a whole month, I think, even more. Whenever I erase, like my little notes here, I
Mhm.
have them with those. So I put it up, no more pain, no more suffering. That was going to be my new reality. And I didn't have to force it. I just had to declare it.
That's okay. And I have heard that before, but not from this angle. This is really powerful to me because it didn't make sense. Well, and also I probably wasn't ready to hear it before, but it just didn't make sense to me before. So now let me ask this question because I'm in the process of working through some ancestral healing work myself.
Mhm.
And it's very interesting to me. There's so many different ways obviously of doing it from different experiences, different cultures, however that works. That's what I'm seeing. Um, and listening to you, it sounds like it's different. So can you go into what ancestral clearing is and how that works or how you do that work?
Okay. I do it with a coding that is used, which is called the Inca cross. And the Inca cross is a molecular behavior that is that allows to see the memories that the body carries. I mean, the way how I do it, right? That's what you're asking me. So when I have a client, I'll do a Inca cross reading, or we'll do, which is different to code coaching. And then Inca cross reading is like a map. I'll say, your ancestors taught you to be submissive. So we're going to change that now. And so through the molecular behavior, we tap into inside. Okay, so you have the cell. Inside of the cell, you have the DNA. Inside of the DNA, you have the tiny little atoms, and they're different colors. And inside of the atoms, there's a little sign like this. It's like 3 dots. It's called the quarks. And then
Quack, spell that.
I think it's QUAKS.
QUAKS. It's almost
So,
like quark.
or something like that.
Quantum healing.
Yeah.
Is this a quantum?
I think that's the way how it's spelled. It's inside of an atom.
Okay, it sounds like it would be close. Quark. I've heard that
Okay.
before. Okay.
Yes. So inside of the atom, you have the proton, neutron, electron. Electron is like the charge that you put. You have a hair dryer. It's not going to work unless you put it in your charger on the wall.
Right.
That's the action of the electron. It will recharge any movement inside of the atom. But then you have the protons and the neutrons inside of the nucleus. And so this is what I learned through my lineage when I got called through my lineage to understand the molecular behavior. So once you go to the proton is the creative part of you. And the neutron is the direction part of you.
Wait a
And
minute. I'm writing this down. Hold on. So the
Sure.
proton is the creative part of you,
That's right.
and the neutron is
It's the direction.
the
The
direction
direction. So,
direction that you're supposed to go, or the direction. What is
let's say you want to go to the beach in California, right?
okay.
LA.
Okay.
That is created in the proton. But then you say, okay, how am I going to get there? Okay, I'm going to rent a car. I'm going to research how much it's going to cost. I'm going to drive 10 hours to get there. And then to go to the beach, I have to make sure I have a swimming suit.
That's
All
the
that part,
proton.
that is the neutron.
Well, that's the neutron, but the proton doesn't.
It's the dream. It's the dream.
That's the dream.
That's the dream. And so the neutron is how you make it happen.
How you make it happen. That makes sense. Okay.
Inside of the proton, there's a triangle.
Right.
And that's what I was talking about. And so when I work in energy, because of my gifts, allows me to envision. And these are tiny, tiny, tiny little ones. I mean, there's not really microphones. I mean, it's so I can go there and I can change the behavior there, but only I'm allowed to do that if I'm coming from the perspective of self-love. Because I won't have otherwise I won't have the ability to do that. So I cannot teach that to others. But I can teach you to love yourself. I cannot teach you that gift because I won't be able to.
Right.
I can teach you how to love yourself, how generate your self-value, where when you create your own intentions, you can recreate your new realities through your behavior.
Okay, so I know in some of the studies that I've done with Native American elders and people who go to Native American elders or went back in the day, that they would never, like you just said it, and I just want to see if this is the same idea. They don't teach you anything. They actually ask you questions so you can learn this for yourself. And what this sounds like is it creates an opportunity for the for you to fully shift it at the molecular level, because once it shifts there, then it never goes back to the old stuff anymore. You know, they always talk about once you get, and I've discovered this in my own healing journey. It's like you get to a certain point, you heal whatever that is, which obviously sounds like it's this molecular level. And then, you know, if you're going to come back to something, it's not at the same experience. It's at a little bit of a different experience. And so, like with the Native Americans, the elders used to make the person come to their own conclusions so that they can actually heal at that molecular level, is what this is sounding to me.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Wow.
I make suggestions, but it's your choice.
Right. Okay. Well, now
You,
this makes sense on a physiological level. This isn't just hoo-ha, woo-woo stuff. It's an actual thing.
you got it. And that's why I'm saying trauma, you have a choice to be in trauma, not to be in trauma. You can create your own reality. But you get to understand why are you choosing that.
Mm-hmm.
And once you understand why you're choosing that, then you can let it go. And that letting go is done through self-love and self-value. If you choose to feel that, not to think about it, but to feel it.
Right. And you have to feel it because the feeling also creates another energy expression within the body rather than just thinking about it, where thoughts don't really have, I mean, they have energy, but they don't have the energy for the body. They just have that energy for the mind. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So let me share this with you, okay? Because once you start seeing perspective from self-love and value, you change your boundaries. You change your way of
Yes.
behavior.
Yes. Yes.
So I am working with two nonprofit organizations, and this is mainly women that have so much money that created on nonprofits. How do I integrate? How do I give my money? And I see that this is a good investment.
Mhm.
So from the molecular behavior, and that's why I was going to interview somebody tomorrow that has another, she also is the founder of another nonprofit. When you're donating money, besides getting a tax cut, which is great benefit already, how do you want that person? Who do you want that person to become?
Mm.
Will benefit a fair exchange. So, because for the longest time, and this is the energy that's changing in the world, we like it or we don't,
Mhm.
new behavior coming.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
it used to be that companies will send money to Peru to poor people so they can be able to supply food to their own children. But the process of thinking is very different to the person who's giving the money. So the new energy, that's coming to world is what is this person that's receiving the money going to do to balance the energy to the person who's giving the money?
Mm.
What is that person going to do? That is what's coming with us awakening without even be aware of this, to the balance of the giving and receiving, to the balance of creativity, the dreamer, and the one who's going to make it happen. We're coming to this whole new reality that's going to be different. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but if I'm already seeing these people coming that have the money, coming to change the new strategy to create a new frequency, and they're coming and they're awakening, okay, what's here for me, which
Mhm.
is the transformation of the other person to be in the same level that we can work together, dance together into this new universe that's being created, because it's not only the planet. Then that conversation changes, because a person who is in the trauma, poor me about the trauma, going to the past and reliving this, is not going to be able to make it into that reality.
Because that's where people stay stuck.
Exactly.
It doesn't give the recipient the opportunity to get out of that stuck because they're just being handed this without giving them the, I guess, healing or the uh what's another, I'm not even sure what,
Opportunity to feel value.
but okay,
Yeah.
that makes
Because they're receiving these
okay.
things, but I'm receiving this because they don't see my value. So how am I going to feel valuable if I'm already seeing money that's sending me the message I don't have value, and that's where I'm at.
So
But
that's
this,
why people stay, like poor people poor people, people who do not have a lot of money. That's why they stay in that spot, because they don't get that opportunity to see their own value, and they're recreating this process of being
Right.
the money, but they don't have any way of recreate. I mean, that's not totally true, because there are certain groups that do help them to learn and find their value. But for the most part, at least the way things have been going on in this country for many years that I know, because I've been in this country, they never gave them that opportunity. They just gave them the money. Is that what you're?
Isn't that what we do when we're in trauma?
That's what we do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We just
because we
feed
don't know.
our trauma. We feed our own trauma.
Right. We don't know what we don't know.
So nobody is really in the world. This is a moment we have to take responsibility. It's us that we keep into the trauma of the past.
And we are such powerful creatures, and we don't even know how powerful
Right.
we are.
So stop donating money or energy to yourself to make yourself small by indulging into the trauma of the past. Just let it go. And this is also for me. I have to do this to be where I'm at. I have to let that poor me type of thing. And it's not easy. I get it. It's not easy. You are going to go down and up so many times, but it's about the future that you want to create. And that's why I'm using that example. Give to yourself something and make yourself responsible. Just in the way I'm saying, give the money to the farmer, make him responsible that he's available. He can create his own reality. Do the same thing with ourselves. We need to do the same thing with ourselves.
I was raised Jewish, so I kind of read the Old Testament, I mean the New Testament, most of it. That's exactly what Jesus says. This is the whole concept of what is it? You don't give a man a fish, you teach him how to fish. Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we need to be, since this topic is about trauma, we need to redirect and come back to that.
Yeah.
Are you feeding yourself the poor little thing, poor me? Yes, I get it. They didn't know any better, and that's why they create a terrible situation for you. But now you take the responsibility. That is your level of productivity. That is you learning how to fish, and let it go and focus into the present and your value and what you can create with that to create the future that you want to create.
Wow. Wow. And it almost sounds like, though, that even people who give the money, if they're not in a space of self-love themselves, they're giving it out of guilt or fear or whatever, not self-love, that they're not allowing that energy to build in self-love, because it's not coming from self-love either.
Right. And that's part of the research and development doing. It's calling the people who are the donors and saying, what do you want? What is that person going to do that while he's working is also fulfilling? And you have the sense of fulfillment and accomplishment in the process.
Which creates the value in the self-love.
It also creates the value of self-love of the person who's donating them.
Wow. So kind of go a little bit more into detail about how the trauma actually impacts the molecular behavior.
Yeah. For instance, and this is part of the trauma, right? It's like you want to go to California, but you don't have the car to get there. So the dream gets stuck and it doesn't produce energy. So that's how we get sick. And that is the movement. We stuck being in the past. Our molecular behavior gets stuck in the past as well. But when you're making new choices where you say, no more pain, no more suffering, you're sending messages. So when you're sending that message, you start stimulating your heart, your feelings, and you say, okay, maybe it's not that car that's going to take you to California, but there's another way to get there. The ideas start coming from the future, and then your body start healing.
So any kind of sickness, this will cause any kind of sickness. Like, give some examples of what that looks like.
For instance, but this is not the direction I'm going. So I'm not doing this healing type of work anymore. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes, I'm doing a different type of work now. But when I will work with viruses, that Lyme illness, Lyme disease, they have their own intelligence. So they will come into the body and they say, oh, here's the trauma. She feels sorry for herself. So we need to stimulate more. They use your own story against you, and then they will keep the Lyme illness inside of it. It will keep himself by using your own knowledge inside of you. But if somebody were to come with the energy of self-love, using the feelings, technology, it will override that because you increase the proton saying, okay, if I cannot get in the car, I decide I'm going to get in the car, but it's going to be in a different way. And then in that moment, those are the feelings, right? So when the feelings start coming back into the body, then the viruses cannot be there because it overrides they cannot stimulate feelings. They cannot break down feelings. That's how powerful we are when we have feelings. So they leave, and that's how our immune system gets stronger, and now we don't get sick.
Okay, so basically the intelligence of the body, that we are told that our body is not intelligent because it doesn't know how to heal itself, where you can cut your finger and within a week your body heals it, but we're still told that we have to do all this other stuff to heal our body. So on one side we're being told that the body is not intelligent, and on the other side it is.
It's very intelligent.
Because it is very intelligent, especially when our feelings are high. We have high energy feelings about ourselves, our self-love, the self-value, because the more we experience those higher vibrational feelings, like you're saying, this is what I'm gathering from this, the higher our body vibrates, and that's what creates the healing of the body.
Right.
So well, what do you say to people who are like, well, you have to get 30, like they're giving kids 37 different shots now. It's like, wait, that makes no sense. That doesn't give the body an opportunity to be intelligent. You're already destroying it.
You find the trauma. What is the trauma that's triggering the allergy?
Well, no, it's not an allergy. I'm talking about babies. I'm talking about the fact that at this point in the world, in the US, they now give about 37 shots to babies.
Wow, that's a lot.
Right? When I was growing up, there were like 6 or 5, something like that. But now they're giving 37 shots.
Wow, I honestly don't know too much about that, Han. But the reason why I don't do this work anymore is because it took a lot of research to be able to observe that. I was thinking there's 3 different types of shamans, and they're the ones who research into the illnesses, how they behave, why they behave to feelings.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. I mean, if I were in Peru and I have somebody who's cooking me, doing my laundry, paying my rent, and doing all these things, yeah, I can commit to that 100%, but that's not my reality, right? But so I have been assigned to something else. And my assignment is to help to create communities and how to balance in the way that the molecular behavior works and the balance of the female and male energy and creating those types of communities and giving them the source of understanding of themselves so they can experience that in their communities.
And that's where we need to talk more at some point, because that's kind of the similar direction that I'm being pulled as well. So we can have that conversation later, but I have a few more questions I wanted to ask you before we get to the end of this conversation. And the first one is, how do you see the individual and their healing work contributing to a larger societal transformation? So like each individual is doing their healing work. What does that look like for the bigger picture?
A better place. A much better place. I mean, if people are willing to heal themselves with self-love and with self-love, it comes with a story, because we create stories, we create experiences. If you're willing to love yourself, then you go into essence of integrity, right? And your integrity tells you what works and what does not work. So can you imagine if we're a large community where integrity, where we know coming from our heart what works and doesn't work, we can repair what it is done that needs to be repaired, or we can let it go. We can let go the trauma of the world and start all over again and that's the best way to delete something. You don't pay attention to the past and low frequency will go away. It's, yeah.
I feel like the ancestors and the ancients are part of this process of healing that we're
Mhm.
going through because there's so much knowledge underneath the surface that I don't think that most people have never touched on. There are people out there who are doing the research on that stuff, but there's something about the ancestors and the ancients and the lineages that are part of this process of helping us to heal. Do you see?
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. I totally agree with you.
It was just this hit. I got this hit. It was like, wow, there's something happening here. It's bigger than we think, but we're not going to know what it is yet because we have to go through the other stuff first.
It's quite interesting. And I'm just going to put my perspective there for what I'm seeing for whoever is listening this that maybe can serve you. Because observation's everything, right? How we observe is what we become. In Peru, it's a small country compared to the United States, and there's amazing countries there. But because of this lineage, the ancient part that they carry, they can master things that are amazingly. And obviously, they still have to work in corruption and poverty. There's things that need to. But if you really look at the quality of what they master into the distribution of goods and taking care of their lands now is improving. The quality of food is because it's the feelings, the inhering, they're changing, allowing themselves to create a new reality with their feelings. And obviously, eventually, that's going to push what's not working. But the focus is into what's working.
Mm,
So we need to focus on what's working. Go ahead.
right. That's a good idea. Do you feel like power places like Machu Picchu are part of this process as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They're starting to open, I guess.
Their energies are getting stronger. Yeah, I just, those sites, I mean, it's so humbling because through what I see through my parallel realities, like I was sharing that story from this man where they have only light for an hour and a half a day, I can also see and I can feel the contribution of these, the Mu people, right, which were in our, by the time that were in our society, they're the ones, they're not that tall and they have the long head. So their love, they master love so much. They were able to create these societies with so much technology of self-love that every little detail of some of these places, the really ancient ones, right, have that stamp, the blueprint of technology of love. Yeah.
The technology of love. I love that
Mhm.
because nobody would look at love as a technology.
Mm-mm. And
But
that's one of the concepts. I'm sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, you didn't know. It's like it's such a high vibration that it is a technology. That makes total sense to me.
And that's what I talk about in my book, The Technology of Love.
That's the name
Um,
of the book.
the name of the book is Circular Time, uh,
Circular
a journey of self-love,
Journey
of self-love.
Self-Love. Because I'll go ahead and put that in the link to that. Is it on Amazon or where do you? Okay,
It's
I'll
in Amazon.
I'll put the link in the description for your book also. Um, and then so how with all this being said, how do you define awakening?
Awakening is experience. I think awakening does not have to do with time and space, but wanting to experience who you are in a way that it makes sense to you, that has fulfillment and accomplishment.
Hmm.
A lot of people confuse spirituality with awakening, and I don't think they should, because spirituality is a completely different component to it.
Hmm. And I agree with that because when I made the decision of the title for this podcast, although they sound like it goes together, awakening soul divinity. There's no the awakening pieces are to me is our humanity and who we are,
Mhm.
uncovering that truth. And
Mhm.
soul divinity is that truth.
Mhm. Yeah, two completely different types of DNA.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But it's almost like two different sides of the same coin. You know,
So spirituality is the relation between our planet Earth and the sun. We get the light to have the experience as a humans,
mhm,
but we don't get the light to be the sun. It's not possible.
mhm,
Now, with that said, is there a possibility that we eventually can become the sun? Yes, we can, but we have to have the experience of what's the experience and the planet Earth before we understand how a planet can go dark or a planet can go hot to the point where it becomes a sun. But you have to have the experience of being in the planet Earth first
mhm,
before you have those experiences.
mhm. Wow. Okay, this is pretty deep. You're going right where I like going. Now you had mentioned you had touched on this a little bit earlier about the balance of the masculine and the feminine. My question is, what are your thoughts on healing the divine feminine and how it relates to healing of the divine masculine?
In my language, healing the female energy is from the perspective of the molecular behavior, is healing or bringing into the creative part, the dreams, the way how we want to be is our dreams, and that we all have male and female energies. And when it comes to the relationship between men and women, or the female male energy, I think we need to acknowledge men for who they are. As much as we can be direct about what's not working with them, we need to also to acknowledge. Because when you acknowledge a male energy, I have a lot of male clients. In male, if you acknowledge them and they are to the point, if you acknowledge them and you help them to see the positive things they're doing, it will be easier to make a transformation.
Mhm. It's exponential. When they have that, it's exponential, right?
Right. So going back to the story of the creator who wants to go to California, the dreamer, but then he keeps putting down the red car that wants to take him to California. The car will say, get violent, so I'm not going, it's just going to break down. So she's not going to get where she wants to go.
Mhm.
So if she were to acknowledge the fact that he is the reason why things are happening and this is in your own dynamic, right? And then eventually in your relationships, you always acknowledge the person for the good things that they're doing. And I can guarantee the possibility or working as a team will be much better than crashing that person and creating a trauma.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Wow. Like you're saying all these things that I've always thought about, like validating these things, and it's just very powerful for me to hear you say it. So thank you for that. Now,
Well,
how this is just easy. How can people get in touch with you?
oh, wonderful. Yes, they can go to my website, the Inca Way, and it's spelled with Inca is in Peru, it's spelled with K, but in English, my website is spelled with Inca C, theincaway.com.
Okay.
Or they also can Google my name, and my name is also linked to my website,
Okay.
Elena Radford.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. And is there anything else that you would like to share before we wrap up that you really want people to know?
To not give up on yourselves because you're the dream of the future.
Mm,
Yeah,
the
that's
truth
what I would like.
of the future. Wow.
Mhm.
I got soul tears. I call them that when I start tearing up a little bit. It's like that hit my soul. That was wow. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
All right, Miss Elena and everyone who is watching or listening, thank you so much for being here on Awakening Soul Divinity podcast. I'm so grateful. Elena, thank you for sharing your heart and your soul and your love and your value and all of it. I really appreciate this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time too. And You're amazing. Remember that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone, take care. Bye bye.